Thought I was doing myself some good, a daily pill like I was told I should. Then the numbness crept into my feet, couldn't keep my balance on the street. Is it MS? My symptoms are the same. The doctor said you have B6 toxicity, and your vitamins are to blame.
In Australia, products containing 10 milligrams or more of vitamin B6 are required to carry a nerve damage warning. This podcast is for awareness only and does not replace medical advice. Please consult your GP or healthcare professional for personalized care. Vitamin B6 is not checked in standard blood tests.
This is a content warning. This episode contains a discussion of a suicide attempt during early B6 toxicity recovery. If you need immediate mental health support, contact Lifeline Australia on 131114 or your local crisis line. My guest also mentions mold. Mold toxicity shares overlapping neurological and physical symptoms, such as peripheral neuropathy, chronic fatigue, cognitive brain fog. Some vitamins and supplements utilize fungal fermentation in their manufacturing processes. However, synthetic vitamin B6 is predominantly produced through a distinct chemical synthesis. Before my diagnosis of B6 toxicity, I was tested for mold toxicity. Anyway, let's begin today's episode. Hello, welcome to the podcast no one wants to be on. This is the B6 Toxicity and Me Diagnosis Stories podcast. And welcome our guest today, Blair, and she's in South Africa at the moment. How are you?
I am doing okay, thank you. How are you? And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And as I said, we really don't want to be here, but we really feel the need to share our story.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about you and your life before B6 toxicity.
Yeah, so I am the owner of a public relations agency. I was born and raised in California, and have always kind of been in marketing and PR, and started at the bottom of that career and sort of worked my way up and was the head of marketing for a $7 billion organization. And in my time there, I took them from $7 billion to $9 billion, from $16 billion in assets under management to $20 billion in assets under management. I met my husband in the pandemic. We were neighbors, and working from home forced us to finally meet. We had never met before. And he said, this guy just made $700 million off of your work. Don't you want to start your own thing? And I went, no, thank you. I had a very stable paycheck and a really nice bonus, and then the back to office email came, and I thought I can't go back to office. I don't know, that just isn't working for me. And so I started my own agency in 2021, and we now have locations in Los Angeles, New York, Johannesburg, and Denver.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just bewilders me that we are not dumb people that get B6 toxicity. We're highly educated, really doing our thing in our life, and we get tripped up by B6 toxicity, trying to support ourselves with things that didn't really support us. So what happened to you?
So in 2024, my husband and I moved from California to Colorado to open up the agency there. And when we arrived, it was really hot that summer, which was, not unusual for California. But people kept saying over and over, you live at elevation now, you really need to hydrate. And that was just like something that everybody said. Like strangers would say that. The governor posted about it that year. People we knew in the community would just say you really need to be careful about hydration, which is funny because California gets way hotter than I guess the greater Boulder area. And nobody talked about, you really need to hydrate in California. But I was hyper aware of hydration and like the word hydration. And so that December 2024, we walked into a Costco and there was a pack of, I didn't know what, it just said on the front, liquid hydration. And I went, oh, great. This is perfect. Everyone keeps saying I need to be hydrated. And so I now know that I was drinking liquid IV, and I didn't know at the time what electrolytes were. I didn't know that they had synthetic vitamins in them. I didn't know it had B6 in it at all. I didn't even know what electrolytes were. I didn't know that they're like, I just had never given vitamins a thought in my life. I'd never taken a multivitamin. I've never, like, just never something that I had ever considered. And so I started drinking one a day just because I thought I was hydrating myself. And, my husband and I were very active, go on very long walks all the time. We just moved to Colorado, which was, very much known for its hiking. So we were more than active enough to sort of need extra hydration. And the first thing that I noticed in December of that year, kind of almost immediately, was a bit of, not dizziness, but like a little bit of rocking. And the way that I put it was, I was seeing like an acupuncturist at the time, and I remember telling him and my husband, like, sometimes it feels like I can feel the earth spinning, but it wasn't all the time, and it wasn't a lot, so I just kind of dismissed it. And then one night, my husband was also drinking them. And one night we ordered Thai food, and we both had this very weird, within like 30 minutes of each other, very strange adrenaline rush, like pure adrenaline, like could feel it coursing through us. His came first, and he said, I just had this weird reaction. And then 30 minutes later, I went, whoa, now I come to know that B6 impacts your glutamates, and that Thai food place likely used MSG in the food. And so we were having a reaction to glutamates. We just didn't know it. And then I started having really crazy heart palpitations, like really, really, really crazy. Like my heart would skip beats. You could see my heart. And almost POTS like symptoms where like I would stand and get really lightheaded. My heart rate would go through the roof. And I went and saw a cardiologist, and my husband came with me, and I said, I'm having these unexplained palpitations. And they did multiple tests and didn't find anything. And so she recommended a medication, and I took it once, and I didn't like how it made me feel. And so I never took it again. And, even in that office, she said, there's nothing wrong with you, but sometimes, we just get a little, and my husband stopped her, and he said, I think it sounds like you're about to tell my wife that she has anxiety. And this isn't anxiety. She's having distinct episodes of tachycardia where, I was keeping a blood pressure log and a heart rate log and all this stuff. And then in January, I started to have like seasonal allergy symptoms, where I was never an allergic person. I'd never had an allergic reaction to anything in my life. But I had, occasional allergies, but they started to get really severe. And I was like, what is going on? And in February, the rocking got even worse. And so things kind of started to really compound. And it all kind of came to a head in March of 2025. My dad came to visit from California, and we went to a restaurant. One of the great joys of my life is I love to find really cool, trendy restaurants and go and try them. Like, that's just something I love to do. And it's, the act of finding them, and then the act of bringing someone you love. And so we went and tried a new restaurant, and I tried chicken liver for the first time, not knowing, one, that I was already toxic, and two, not knowing that organ meats, in particular liver, is really high in B6. And I immediately just like crazy dizziness. I started sweating. I started like I was vomiting, but nothing was coming up. And I was like, I'm having an allergic reaction to something. My mouth swelled up, my tongue swelled up. I had never had anaphylaxis whatsoever, so I didn't know what I was experiencing. So my husband rushed me to the ER, and they said, we're going to give you a shot of epi. That is the treatment for anaphylaxis. And I said, wait a minute. I've been having very severe heart palpitations for the better part of a couple months. Is there anything that we can do to not do the epi? And because I think the last thing that I need right now is adrenaline. And they said, nope, epi is the treatment for anaphylaxis. So here's your epi shot. And my body immediately went into shock. And I went into VTAC, which is ventricular tachycardia for 18 beats. So I'm sitting in the ER bay. Suddenly, all the lights start flashing. Sounds start going off. My heart, I can feel it, no beat whatsoever for 18 beats. And people got real friendly with me after that. I made a lot of friends in the ER really fast. They put the shock pads on me. Didn't happen again. And they kept me overnight in the cardiac unit. And they, went through a list and said, what medications are you taking? And I gave them the medications, but I didn't even think to say like, oh, I'm also taking these electrolytes because I didn't think it was a medication. I didn't know what was in it.
So can you tell me what was in the electrolytes? How much B6?
It was 102% of RDA per serving,
And how many were you having a day?
just one. But I mean, I was
So,
having one a day for 4 months. Yeah,
so there was probably about 2 milligrams in each serving of
just
electrolytes.
under. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I was eating chicken, potatoes. I was having a banana every day, avocado, love me some chips and guac. Like, so I just had no idea that I was so far over RDA into toxic levels. But also that electrolytes are high doses of sodium, magnesium, calcium, potassium. And when you mess with the things that give your body energy and control the energy and the function of your body, you mess with that system, that whole system. When I was discharged from the hospital, I that was when symptoms went from being casual to being off the charts. I suddenly could not stand or walk on my own. I was so dizzy. I couldn't sit up. Like I couldn't even sit at the dinner table to eat food. Um, I developed head to toe neuropathy. And again, I didn't know what was causing it. I thought, okay, I'm just having a bad reaction to the epinephrine because I'd never had epi before. So I continued to drink one of these packets every day. And eventually the neuropathy got so bad, I couldn't touch my face without sending my entire body into shock and I would pass out, or start vomiting, and I just could not figure out what was going on with my nervous system. And then about a week into it, I developed tinnitus. So I eventually wound up with 3 tones of tinnitus. The first one was a beeping sound, which I'd had before and it had gone away, also related to medical trauma. So I didn't really think much of it. I went, okay, I've just been through another medical trauma. It went away before, it'll go away again. And then I had trouble sleeping. So I went from, I'm a pretty consistent 9 hours a night to 7 to 6 to 5 to 2 to 1 to I was up for, over 40 hours and I just could not figure out what was going on. I went back to the ER that originally saw me and I said, something happened when you guys gave me that epi. And I need you to undo undo whatever you did. And I was vomiting, but vomiting nothing. And they gave me like an intravenous medication for the nausea, and I had allergic reaction to that. So I was like, I'm having these allergic reactions to everything now. I can't keep any food down. Suddenly I'm, losing really, really massive amounts of weight because I'm vomiting up everything I try to eat. And I just could not figure out what was happening to me. So I went back to the ER twice, I went to see my doctor 5 times. They diagnosed me with everything from anxiety to you're having a bipolar manic episode, which I'm not diagnosed bipolar. And I just was like, no, there's something wrong. And I finally went back to the doctor on May 31st of 2025. And I said, I'm not leaving this office until you test everything. Test my vitamins, test my minerals, test my iron, ferritin, whatever it is that you need to test. I'm not leaving here until you test everything. And so they tested. I got a blood test that day. That night, my husband, who had also been drinking them, had a heart attack. Yeah.
So obviously he's okay because he's with you.
He's okay. Yeah, he's okay. But at
Wow.
44, had a heart attack. We can't prove if it was related to him drinking any of this stuff or not. But 2 days later, so he was dismissed, discharged the next day with what's called an NSTEMI, which is a mild heart attack. So his it was never a full blockage, which we're so grateful for. So he was discharged June 1st. June 2nd, I got a call from the clinic to say your blood tests are back and your B6 levels are more than twice the upper limit. So whatever you're taking with B6 in it, you need to stop. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not taking anything that has B6 in it. I'm not taking any vitamins. And she said, your B6 is really high. And so I kind of had to go down a list of like, what am I consuming in a day? And finally it clicked. Like, oh, I'm drinking this stuff. Let me take a look at the package. Sure enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you stop consuming it, then I had to kind of become almost my own doctor, because it was like the doctors at the clinic were like, all right, well, stop taking whatever has B6 in it and like, best of luck to you. Like, you'll be fine. They don't tell you that, B6 has a half-life of 30 days, so I was still going to be toxic for 6 months and going through withdrawals, and none of my neurotransmitters were going to work correctly because B6 impacts everything. And, there was just no, like, your GABA glutamate levels are going to be out of sync. So I would say once I stopped consuming what had B6 in it, I got way, way, way worse before things ever even started to get better. And I had no help throughout that process. I went to see multiple neurologists. One of them laughed at me, and the other one I had to explain what B6 was. And so it was just a horror show of like trying to go to all these different doctors and get something to try to help with the symptoms of withdrawal, because it was just unimaginable terror. I mean, I was having the heart palpitations, tinnitus. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't walk on my own or stand on my own. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't eat at all when I wasn't feeding myself, when someone else was feeding me. So it wasn't just, the beeping tinnitus. Suddenly I got another tone in my right ear. So I had two in my right ear, and then I developed a third in my left ear. And it was so loud that I, like, from across a small room, could not hear my husband speaking to me at all. And then I developed a third kind of warbling tone in my left ear. And when that happened, I just broke, because I'm on the autism spectrum, and so I'm very sensitive to sound anyway. And so to have this happening to me, I mean, it was just horrific. The hallucinations were horrific, just the whole thing. And it sort of culminated August 27th. I stopped being able to sleep in my bed at all, because I was bedridden for the better part of 6 months, and I just had so much trauma from everything that happened in that bed, that I started sleeping on the floor, and then I started kind of sleeping in the closet, just as like I felt so unsafe that I needed like a dark enclosed space. And it was like 2 a.m. and my head was screaming. And I couldn't sleep, and so I reached around in the dark for one of my husband's neckties, and I tied it to one of the beams in the closet, and I tried to hang myself. So I just couldn't take it anymore. And thankfully, geometry kicked in because I was too short or the necktie was too long, but my feet hit the floor. And in that moment, I realized, like, I don't want to die. I just want my life back. I was a successful businesswoman managing over 40 clients with 25 employees. We lost everything overnight, and I didn't believe that I could ever live a normal life again. And then I learned about half-lives, and that eventually my half-lives would pass and I would stop being toxic. It took me 6 months. My half-lives, they ended on November 17th of 2025. And from there, it was noticeable that things started to improve very slowly, but started to improve. I started to be able to sleep with medication. I wasn't sleeping through the night, but I could take multiple sets of medication and get enough sleep. I started to be able to tolerate foods again. So, the nerve pain went away. So it was a very long, tedious, and hard journey. And I had to ask for the things that I needed to try to stay alive. But 6 weeks ago, we left the US to come to South Africa. My husband is from here. And in the 6 weeks that I've been here, first being out of the place where the trauma happened was a real help. Immediately, I started sleeping through the night. Medicated, but the meds they hold me down all night now. And I've added back multiple safe foods. I'm tolerating more stimulation. Tinnitus has dropped down from a full 24/7 kettle tone. The warbling in my left ear is gone. The kettle tone is now what sounds like static, like a radio dial that's just trying to find the right frequency. But the only thing that has really not passed is I was having very severe flashbacks every day. And so some of the PTSD and overstimulation, I'm still having vestibular issues. Because B6 controls your nerves, it's every nerve, your auditory nerves, your vestibular nerves, your cranial nerves, your autonomic nerves, your central nerves, your, everything is impacted. And so I was in my body as I watched every system one by one fail. Every system failed. And now I'm watching systems start to slowly heal, but I know it's going to be a really long journey.
Did you get any bladder urgency, or you didn't suffer that symptom?
Yeah, I did. I still do sometimes. And interestingly, I also got kind of around the same time this like intense, deep cold that like I just couldn't shake. It was in deeper than my bones, kind of this cold feeling right around when I started to have bladder urgency and like couldn't hold water. I was going to the bathroom every 5 seconds.
Yep. Yeah, it's very scary how many symptoms there are and how many, well, as you said, it affects the nerves. Everywhere's affected.
Yeah.
So you're not getting the pins and needles in your arms and legs anymore, and your neuropathy's sort of easing off.
Yeah.
So that's recovering, and you still have other symptoms that are recovering as well.
Yes.
You've had the turning point, and coming to South Africa has helped immensely. So how do you see yourself recovering and getting back to where you were before B6 toxicity?
I don't think I will be who I was before. The trauma that one goes through when you suffer this sort of toxicity, at least for me, I think my case was maybe a bit more severe because I wasn't just B6 toxic. I was also like electrolyte toxic, right? So I had toxic levels of sodium, toxic levels of magnesium, toxic, levels of calcium. So nothing was functioning right. And the PTSD of that, like, I don't think I'll ever go back to being the person that I was before, because before this was this sort of very relentlessly optimistic, nothing bad can happen to me. Certainly not this bad. I couldn't even fathom that something like this could happen. And now that I know and I've been through it, I don't think I'll ever have that naivety again. And that's sort of a heaviness that you carry. I still am very, very sensitive to stimulation, so I can't watch TV. I have to choose between going out and like going to the store, or am I going to work for the day because I can only handle one. I can barely be on my phone. So I do a lot of puzzles and reading and, stuff like that. I can work again, which is great. So we're starting to rebuild the agency. So I think the person that I will be when I'm recovered will have a much slower life than the person that I was before this, which I don't think is a bad thing. I was stretched really thin. I was running, a big business, and I don't think I'll be capable of going back to something like that. So my life will be different for sure. And I think there's just this weariness now of what I'm putting in my body that, I'm so much more careful. I'm only eating whole foods, nothing out of a box or bag. The only thing that I can eat that comes out of a box is like oatmeal. Everything else I eat is whole foods, in their natural form. And I've just re-added rice. And so I think there's this aspect of not wanting what happened to me to happen to other people. And so because my career was in public relations, I have a pretty substantial social media following. And so I just sort of started reaching out to my followers and saying, look, I need your help telling my story. And so I wound up talking to reporters from the New York Times, Guardian, Wall Street Journal. And then a couple days later, I got a LinkedIn message from a reporter at NBC that said, hey, I'm doing a story on B6 and my editor saw your post, and I'd love to talk to you. And so they did a written article, and then they produced an on-air segment about my story. And between those two pieces of media, I guess you'd say, my story reached over 1 billion people, was syndicated in 10 different languages and distributed to dozens of countries around the world. And I started getting messages from people all over the world of, my God, I had no idea what was happening to me, and I've just read your story, and I went and got a blood test, and sure enough, I have B6 toxicity. Or, thank God I came across your story because I'd been drinking liquid IV and I'm going to throw it away right now. Or I went through something very similar 2 years ago, but I had no idea what was happening to me. I did recover eventually, but thanks to your story, I've gotten closure into what happened to me because I never knew what happened, even though I healed. So it's been thousands and thousands of people with some version of that story. And then I'm now in the process of writing a book. So I've got a publisher and an editor, and so my story will be sort of woven in there. And my goal is, honestly, my father-in-law so eloquently put it 2 days ago. He said, don't be a victim, be dangerous. And my goal is not necessarily to be dangerous directly to Unilever or to Liquid IV, but to tell so many people about what happened to me that their sales drop so drastically that they wind up starting to pull this product off the shelves, and all electrolyte products, right? I work in public relations, so I can be loud. To do so many podcasts, this is, I think, maybe the 6th or 7th podcast I've done, to get the message out there so wide and so broad that people stop buying and consuming electrolytes, in particular anything that has B6 in it. that that it stops being produced. And I know in Australia where you are, they just changed the laws that'll go into effect in next year.
Yes, they did, but we're still like there's still products being sold with 50 milligrams
Yeah,
plus of B6.
yeah,
It's ridiculous, and medical professionals aren't aware of it. If we do suspect B6 toxicity, we have to pay for our blood tests. It's not covered anymore. Like it's one step forward, two steps back type of thing, and yeah, there's still a
yeah,
long way to go. And
yeah.
I tell people I was B6 toxic, and you feel like you've got two heads. Like I felt stupid. I really
Mm,
felt dumb. But I know there's so many of us out there that did this, and there were so many people that were probably diagnosed with idiopathic neuropathy and never got answers. At least
yeah.
we are getting answers and we know why.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I almost felt like shame on me as a marketer for kind of falling for marketing messaging, right? I fell for the it's just liquid hydration, right? And not seeing that oh, that's marketing on packaging. So I felt kind of very much the same way. Um, and now I just want to make sure that nobody has to go through what I went through because I nearly didn't make it. I believe you started the Facebook group that I joined.
Carrie Ann started the Facebook group.
Okay.
I, yeah, I just joined, and then I wrote a book about B6 toxicity, and then I've really just tried to educate people because I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's like even one doctor, she had my levels being double, and she didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
So it took another doctor who actually learnt about B6 toxicity to diagnose it. And
Yeah.
B6 is not done in regular blood work. And
Yeah.
Carrie Ann said in the previous podcast, it should be checked because
Yeah.
there's so many things with it in it.
Yeah. Interestingly, when I posted about it on LinkedIn was and I was asking for people to sort of tag reporters that they thought would be willing to sort of tell the story, I also commented and tagged every brand I could think of that had a product that had B6 in it. And not a single brand. I would say at least 100 brands of things that have synthetic B6 in it. Because the problem is synthetic B6, right? The problem is not the B6 that we get from foods. Um, and so medical professionals still think that, oh, B6 is water soluble. B6 from foods is water soluble, right? So our bodies know what to do with that, and then they discard the rest. Synthetic B6, which is put in multivitamins and products and, all kinds of stuff, that is not water soluble. It builds up in your muscles, your nerves, your tissues, your receptors. It builds up in everything, right? Not only that, but in order to make a synthetic vitamin, you have to start with mold. That's just how synthetic vitamins are made. Um,
So
so,
that makes a bit more sense because that's why they say, oh, if you have neuropathy symptoms, you could be mold toxic.
yep, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So that's how they make synthetic vitamins. So when they're adding synthetic B6 to magnesium in your case, and also in some ways magnesium in my case, the way that they make that vitamin is on a little tray that contains mold. And that's how they produce the vitamin. Um, and I kept telling my husband, because Colorado's a very dry place, I kept saying, I think there's mold involved, whether it's, from the humidifier or something. Like I think there's mold toxicity as a part of this. And I couldn't figure out why until I learned how synthetic vitamins were made. And it's just, I think we all feel, all of us who've been through it, feel like we don't want this to happen to anybody else. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like there are a lot of people that I don't like in this world, and I would never wish this on them. Um, and I can't even begin to describe when people ask me, oh, you like what's wrong with you? You have B6 toxicity? Like, what's that? I can't even begin to describe the terror. And so when I tell them everything I've been through, they just are like aghast.
You weren't even taking that much B6.
No, I was taking 100% of RDA. So when you talk about like toxic levels, 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, more than that, I wasn't. I was taking 1.9 milligrams a day. So it's very, very small amounts can make you toxic over time. Um, and yeah, I just think the medical community is so desperately underinformed that every time I went to a doctor, I had to sit and explain to them what was happening. And it just is, that's embarrassing.
Well, now in Australia, we have B6 toxicity on our Health Direct website. And I don't know if you've gone to that. And the TGA also talk a lot about B6 toxicity. So I guess that's a step forward for us here in Australia. But still, that information is only slowly trickling down to the people that it needs to get to.
It's so underreported, especially in the US. Like last year, there were only less than 500 cases reported, but I know that there were more than 500 cases because I've spoken to thousands of people. The reporting process is not easy. I didn't report my case. So the medical community still thinks, oh, this is really rare. And it's just not.
And well, I asked my doctor, oh, did you report my case? And she said, oh, no, I don't know what supplements you were taking and stuff. So I sat down and did the TGA report a few days ago, and it was more frustrating than anything, but I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably time for me to report my case as well. But my one of my goals is to be a big thorn in the side of liquid IV.
So what do you want to tell people?
Don't drink electrolytes. It's not worth it. Don't take anything that has synthetic B6 in it. It's not worth it. Even if you're like, well, I'm not sensitive to it. It's not something to play around with. Like, just stay far, far away from it. Advocate for yourself. If I hadn't kept going back over and over, and if my husband hadn't kept going with me and saying, look, if you tell my wife that she has anxiety one more time, we've got to be our own advocates. So don't settle for anything until you get an answer. Get your bloods done, but also be weary because I know B6 levels can drop really quickly in the blood. So don't supplement with anything unless you have a blood test that says you're deficient in something, right? And even then, be really careful, right? Like, even too much water is a problem.
Yeah.
And then if you are B6 toxic and you are one of the cases that is as severe as mine was and sometimes still is, you are not alone. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. If you are considering doing something drastic, or you feel like you're never going to live a normal life again, I'm here to tell you that you will survive. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be horrible for like a while. Nerves regenerate very, very slowly, but they do heal. You will heal. And we want you here. You have a community of people. I joined the Facebook groups, and then I personally had to leave them for my own mental health because it's just so difficult. I was very, very suicidal for a very long time. Very, like, deep, deep suicide risk. To read the horrors of what people were going through day in and day out was really taking a toll on me. Because they also had this thing that I had, and so it was just, very deeply personal. Um, find support where you can and do what makes sense for you. But it does it does heal. It's going to be slow, and you have to be gentle with yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself emotionally because, like Melissa and I both felt uh, kind of dumb for getting getting ourselves into this situation. And let yourself go through the stages of grief. I went through, and I still go through them. There are times when I go through bargaining again, and I go, I wish I had never moved out of LA. I was born and raised there, and if I hadn't moved to Colorado, this never would have happened. The truth of the matter is, I could have easily picked up the same package in a Costco in California.
Yeah.
So let yourself go through the grief. Let yourself grieve the person that you were before you became toxic. And then my father-in-law also taught me something that he learned when he was in the Rhodesian War, which is when you have, a PTSD symptom, or when you're really in the throes of the stages of grief, which you will go through. It's okay to say, I accept that this happened to me and I'm going to move on. And so that's what I do. I have very severe flashbacks still. There was a night when the rocking was so severe, I was laying flat in bed and I felt like I was on the Drake Passage. I was laying flat and my husband was saying, you're not moving at all. But to me, I am, and I remember screaming, I want my mommy, 35 years old. And I'm saying, I want my mommy. Like that's, and sometimes I think about those moments that were just really terrifying, really terrifying. And now I can go, okay, I can acknowledge that happened to me. That did happen to me, but I can let it go and I can look around and go, okay, I'm not even in the same country anymore. I'm safe. And so you will get to that place.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story today. And it would be great to catch up in a year if I'm still doing this.
It's done. So it's a full book, 40,000 words. I got edits from the editor. I've got a publisher. So I'm working on edits now. So I'll probably be, draft 2 in another 3 months, maybe. And then hopefully it gets published. It's not only about B6 toxicity. It's more about optimism. Because I'll be honest with you, I was a really, really optimistic person before this all started. And being B6 toxic, I reached a level where I lost all optimism, all hope. And then I sort of started to get it back just a little bit. And so the book really is about what happens, my story included, but other stories of people who have been through extreme circumstances, who have lost their optimism, and how you get it back when it's not anymore.
And I feel this now. I actually feel like I want to live now. Whereas when I was B6 toxic, it was horrible. I just felt like I was going to die.
Yeah. And you feel like that every day in and day out for months. And you just go, okay, well, the only way to get peace is, to end this. Yeah. And don't listen to your brain because B6 impacts your neurotransmitters. And so it's very common to go through very, very severe depression. And so not every thought is the truth. If you can just hold on to that, in my case, it's very, very, very severe. I lost all function. And I am recovering. So it's possible.
Wow. Well, thanks once again for sharing your story. And I'm so glad you're on the mend and you've written the book and you're getting it out there. And thank you for joining us in our journey of B6 toxicity. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.